Hello everyone, Sylvie here. I hope that you have had a wonderful week and I hope that you are looking forward to a wonderful weekend. Anyone who has been following me for any amount of time knows that occasionally I like to do videos that have nothing to do with visions or anything of that nature. They're really just kind of views, opinions, rants, whatever you want to call them, about information or things that might be going on around cases that I have covered. Or sometimes even cases that I have not really covered. But anyway, this video is going to be one of those videos where I would just like to discuss some of the information and some of the speculation that has come out around a couple of the cases. Now, the first one that I want to start with is the Idaho University murders. Please understand, first and foremost, I do need to say that nothing that I'm about to say in this video is meant to be disrespectful to anyone, and I'm not accusing anyone of anything, okay? My disclaimer, straight off the bat. Also, can everybody please make sure, if this is your first time to my channel, I have my disclaimers plastered all over my videos and in my About section, so please just go ahead and read those. I'm not going to keep reiterating that information. Okay, anyway, the Idaho University murders. So we haven't really been getting a whole lot of information on this case, right? Law enforcement has been relatively tight-lipped. They have, in my opinion, they have instilled a little bit of a lack of confidence in them, in the community, because they sort of keep flip-flopping. You know, first they said that the crime was targeted, and then they said it wasn't necessarily targeted, and then they said it was targeted. And now I believe what they're saying is that they think that the residents might have been targeted, but not the inhabitants, or maybe it's vice versa. I'm not really sure, because quite frankly, it has been a bit confusing. Now, I can fully understand the frustration of the people who are directly involved, okay? I have not had a child have something horrible happen to them. I have not had a child murdered, but I have had a family member gone missing. I've talked about that a few times. And I can somewhat relate to the frustration of law enforcement not sharing a lot of information about the case. So the first thing that I feel like we really need to address is the fact that Kaylee Gonsalves, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, her father came out at the vigil that was just held, I believe, a couple of days ago, and he basically kind of blurted out that Maddie and Kaylee had died in the same bed. Okay, now, if he actually knew that information, first and foremost, I'm 100% positive that law enforcement would not have wanted him to say that. But if he had actually known that information, then that's fine, you know. But then, if you continue to follow the case as I do, I don't just watch one news outlet. I don't just watch CNN or MSNBC. I don't get my information from Twitter. I don't get my information from Facebook, okay? I go out and I look at every single thing I can find. And the very next day after the vigil, Kaylee's dad did an interview on Fox News, and I will link that in the description, saying that his statement that the girls were in the same bed was just speculation. It was supposedly based on a picture that he had been shown by the coroner that showed that Kaylee's bed was supposedly made. Well, I'm not saying that he's lying. I'm not saying that he didn't get shown a picture. I do find it a little hard to believe that Kaylee's bed was made because, once again, I'm not being judgmental, but if you've seen any of the pictures through the windows of the house was pretty messy, and they didn't really do a lot of upkeep, I don't think, so I would be surprised if her bed had actually been made. But that's just my speculation, right? Okay, so the point of this video is that we have to start trying to learn what is people's speculation and what is actual stated fact. Now, because of the fact that law enforcement has been so wishy-washy, I'm not saying that you should 100% believe law enforcement. I'm actually not the type of person to just go ahead and believe, just blindly believe what law enforcement says. But at the same time, we have to take into consideration that the families of the victims are distraught. They are going to say things that they believe to be true that may not actually be fact, right? So we just have to remember those things before we just go ahead and just latch on to, oh, this information is true, or, oh my God, this happened, or, oh my God, that happened. Because you don't know where that information is coming from or what actually even fueled that assumption. I do feel the need to point something out here. And like I said at the beginning of this video, I am not trying to be disrespectful or accuse anyone of anything in any way. It's just my opinion. But I have issues with people who come out and do interviews within a few days or a week, or to be honest, even 2 weeks of their loved one gone missing or their loved one having been murdered. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't come out and say, you know, if their loved one is missing, that they shouldn't come out and say, you know, this is what I think, or we're very upset, or everyone please help us. You know, when a family member is out there and they're crying and they're clearly distraught and they're clearly, you know, just very emotional, and they're only doing the interview because they're hoping that it's going to get information out to the public that will get the public to help them with their case or with their loved one's case, that is fine. But when you have these people, especially parents, that are out there doing interviews 2 days or 3 days or a week, or like I said, even 2 weeks after something like this has happened, I'm always very skeptical of what these people are saying. Because in my experience, from what I've seen, these people are always extremely well composed. There's never any tears. And I understand that men are less likely to cry in an interview than a woman. But even like with Ethan's mother, and once again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anyone, but if you go back and watch the interviews with Ethan's parents, I think it was only like 2 or 3 days after it happened. And I might be wrong about that. So if I am, that's fine. But I think it was only 2 or 3 days after the murder happened, and these people were out contacting YouTubers and letting YouTubers do interviews with them and all kinds of stuff like that. And his mom is out there with the ugly crying face like people always have, with no tears. And I just can't comprehend that, you guys. And maybe I am being too judgmental in that case, okay? Like I said, I haven't had something horrible like that happen to me, not a murder, but I just really don't feel like that's appropriate for you to be out there. And especially when, like, how are you that well composed? And I guess the reason that I'm being so seemingly judgmental about stuff like that is because, you know, in my situation, when my loved one was missing, I was a wreck, you guys. I was a wreck. And I could not have gone out and done any interviews with anyone, especially not televised interviews. I could never have gone out and straight-faced or the cry, I call it ugly crying face, no disrespect, but it is an ugly crying face. Ugly crying face with no tears. You know, I bawled my head off for weeks. And I just know that there is no way that I would have been out there. And then, you know, I also want to point out that Madison and Xana's family, you haven't heard really anything from them. Madison's dad spoke at the vigil, but I don't believe that Xana's family spoke at the vigil. And those people, I think, are properly grieving. Whereas Ethan's family, not even his family really, I feel like it's his mother, Ethan's mother and Kaylee's father, they're out here doing all these interviews. And I do also have to say that, once again, in my opinion, Kaylee's father, his behavior is very strange in the interviews. He does not make eye contact. He's looking all over the room whenever he's talking to someone. You know, even in this interview that I'm going to link down in the description, he does not hardly make eye contact with the camera at all. And even when he's trying to supposedly intimidate the killer, he still barely makes eye contact with the camera. And I know that they're on like a Zoom call or whatever the case may be, but he could still be looking at the camera. He could still be looking at the person who's speaking to him and interviewing him, and instead his eyes are literally everywhere. So, I don't know, I just find that weird. I want to be very, very clear that I am not accusing Kaylee's dad of anything. I am not saying that he knows something that he's not saying, or that he was involved in the murder somehow, or anything like that. I'm just saying that I feel like he says, oh, I haven't had time to grieve. I get that. But do you really think that coming out here and doing these interviews is what's going to help you through the grieving process? I don't think that's the case. That's my opinion. I don't think that that's true. So basically what I'm trying to say here with this case is there has been all kinds of information coming out. There has been news reports. There have been, I'm sure there's probably 150 YouTube channels or maybe more that are doing reports on these things. Everybody claims to know this. Everybody claims to know that. But law enforcement has not really said hardly anything. So at the end of the day, everything that is currently circulating, other than what law enforcement has actually said, is speculation. Even anything that I say, my visions, things of that nature, it's still speculation. Even though I see these things, there's nothing to prove that what I'm saying is a fact, right? And there's nothing to prove what anybody else is saying is a fact. Not even law enforcement, to be honest, because they haven't really shown us any facts. But since we have no other means of trying to figure out the actual facts of the case, the only thing that we can do is to trust law enforcement. Now, if it comes out that law enforcement has done something dirty or that they have botched the investigation, which happens all the time, you guys, all the time. And I don't mean to keep going back to it, but if you look at the Kiely Rodni case, good Lord, man, that there was so much botched investigation and all kinds of weird stuff going on in law enforcement that it wasn't even funny. And if you think that that stuff doesn't go on all over the country, then you're not paying attention. So, I'm not saying law enforcement is 100% to be believed. I'm not saying that the family is 100% to be believed or disbelieved. I'm just saying that we have to take the information that comes in, and it is our responsibility as individuals to follow that information, okay? If you hear, just because, Kaylee's dad says they were in the same bed, blurts it out very emotionally at the vigil, you don't just latch onto that information and say, oh my God, this is what happened. Because that's quite frankly, that's not being logical in any way whatsoever. Because yes, some news reports jumped on that immediately and they ran a news article that, oh my God, the girls were in the same bed. But then, like I said, you come out here, if you only watch one news outlet and you never watch Fox News, then you come over here and there's this interview where he's saying, yeah, I didn't really know that. I just kind of said that because I saw this picture. So I'm just saying, please, you guys, do yourself a favor. And if you're going to follow a case, actually follow the case. Look at all of the quote unquote information that is being presented. Okay, go outside your comfort zone. If you only ever listen to CNN, then maybe it would do you some good to go and listen to Fox News once in a while. If you only listen to Fox News, maybe it would do you some good to go listen to CNN once in a while. You have to know all sides of everything if you're going to come to what you believe is a logical conclusion. That's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, now quickly, because I didn't want this video to be too long, I do also want to touch on the same kind of situation with the Shanquella Robinson case. A couple of days ago, I'm not sure how many, 2-3 days ago, a reporter from Mexico came out and he did what seemed like a very reputable article about Dejanay Jackson having been arrested for the crime of femicide against Shanquella Robinson. Well, everybody jumped on that bandwagon. Everybody was like, oh, Twitter blew up, all social media blew up. Even some people of some of the YouTube channels that I watch, like Cinema Shogun, he even jumped on there and was like, Dejanay was arrested, yay, blah, blah, blah. Well, then it turned out a couple days later, I think it was literally just last night, Dejanay's mother comes out and she says that there have been no arrests. in Shanquella's case, that the killer is still at large, and that she's frustrated that the FBI is not giving her any information. Now, ordinarily, I would not adhere too much to what a family member had said, because like I just pointed out with the Idaho University case, that, the families are distraught, the families are emotional, the families are frustrated. But in this situation, you have to know that if someone had been arrested and was awaiting extradition to Mexico, the FBI would have at least given Shanquella's family that information. So it's foolish to think that the FBI would not have at least told them that. So with Shanquella's mom coming out here and saying there have not been any arrests, I feel like the reason that she did that interview is because so many people jumped on that bandwagon and were insisting that Dejanay had been arrested. Well, to the best of my knowledge, there still hasn't been any official announcement of who that warrant is for. And there hasn't been any what I believe to be an official announcement. I think it's only just news outlets, a couple of news outlets that covered that she had been arrested. So no official law enforcement announcements have come out and said that anyone was arrested in her case. So this is the exact same situation as it is with the Idaho University murders. It's people say something and everyone gets so excited and so insistent to believe that something is actually happening with the case that they just grab onto it and they run with it. And I understand that we are in 2022. I understand that the internet kind of rules the world at this point. And I don't want to say anything about misinformation because I don't really like the word misinformation. I feel like there's only information, okay? And there's good information and there's bad information, and it's not up to any platform to protect you from that. It is up to you to make logical conclusions and decide what you think seems likely in a case. And then, if actual evidence comes out, if actual proof can be provided, well, then, there it is. And you don't really have any choice but to accept that. So anyway, you guys, I'm getting a little long-winded and I'm sorry about that. I just wanted to, kind of put it out there a little bit that we have to be very careful in these cases, what we choose to latch onto and what we choose to believe as fact. I think that we should all just kind of sit back and we should watch and we should see what happens. And if something that is proven to be factual does come out, then we can discuss that at the time. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. As always, thank you so much for listening. I will definitely be talking to you guys again very, very soon. Bye.